On Friday, we found the domain, which is in the x direction, which is what direction? What direction on the graph is x direction? Left and right. So today we're finding range, which is what directions on the graph? Up and down. Does that make sense? So we're going to go up and down now. So on these first two, we're going to find the range, and we're going to find it in inequality notation. Okay, so again, we're finding range, so it is in the y direction. So when we do it, we want to start with the smallest value. So where would we find our smallest y value? Yeah, we want to go down. So this point here would be our lowest point, right? I think you're thinking of domain. Easy to do.
Oh, yeah.
So what's the y value at that point? -1. So is it a less than or equal to or a less than? Less than or equal to because? It's closed circle there. It's including that value. So because it's the range, it's instead of the x values, we're doing the y values. So we're going to put a y here. And then what would be our biggest y value?
2, 3. 2.
We're going to look at this point over here, which would be our highest. Does that make sense?
So then it's 3.
And the y value would be 2. So less than 2 or less than or equal to 2?
Less than or equal to 2.
Less than or equal to because it is solid again. Questions on that? So again, on Friday we did left to right. Now we're doing up and down.
It's like really hard to see.
I know, but mine the values are hard to see, so you have to count.
It's just like by 1.
Yeah, they're all by 1. I think on the homework you can see it a little better. Okay, so on number 2, we're again doing that in inequality. Yes. So this point right here would be our lowest point. So if we take all these points and squish them onto the y-axis, this would be our lowest right here. So, but that's the x value. So we want to know what the range is, and that's the y value of that point. So this is the x-axis, that's right, and this is the y-axis. So I'm looking in this direction. Good question. It's always where students get mixed up, and that's why I'm doing them on separate days starting out.
No.
So on this one here, what would be my smallest value on this graph? This point right here, which is -2, it is an open circle. So are we going to say less than or equal to? Less than, because it's open circle, which means it doesn't include it. Does that make sense? Okay. So now we want to go in the y direction. That's going to be the biggest. What would be the biggest y value? Because this point right here has a y value of -2. I know, it's easy to get the x and the y mixed up. Now we're looking at the point in the other direction. What would be the highest point? What would be the y value of the highest point? What do you guys think about what he just said, 7? This point right here, which has a y value of 7. Less than or equal to, or less than? Less than or equal to, because this is solid. Does that make sense? So it includes that point.
It's the same thing as domain, but on the y.
Yep. Okay, so those first two we're going to do inequality, just like we did before. Now we're going to do interval notation. So this one is new. Interval notation you're actually going to like. It's easier than inequality. So interval notation, You go with what's the smallest value, you write it first, and then you say the largest value second. So smallest value first, comma, largest value. So looking at this graph, what would be the smallest y value? What do you guys think about -5? So this point right here, which is a y value of -5, right? So we go -5, comma, and then I'll tell you what to put on the outside in a bit. And then what would be our highest y value? 7. So this point right here would be our highest. This would be our lowest. This would be our highest. Does that make sense? So what's the y value there again? 7. Okay, so the -5, is it, do we include that -5? Equal to? So whenever we include the number, we put a bracket. If we don't include that number, we put a parentheses. Do we include 7 here? Yes, so we put a bracket again. That's all you do for integral notation. That's easier.
When do you not put the bracket? When do you not include it?
So if,
Like on infinity?
say if this were an open circle up here, we would put a parentheses.
Or like, would it be like it?
Okay, so now on the second one, what is my first value and on this graph? This point would be my lowest point. What is the y value there? 1. Do we include the 1?
Yes.
Yeah, that's a point there. So we put a bracket because it's included. And then going up, what's my highest? Infinity. So infinity is not a number. So what do you suppose we're going to put next to that? A parentheses. Does that make sense? If you don't include the number, or if it's infinity or negative infinity, you put a parentheses. So I show the inequality first because I think that's harder to get.
That's a good guess.
Okay, on the next two, we're going to do both the inequality and interval. Okay, so we're going to start with inequality. What's my smallest y value?
-6.
This point right here, which is -6, that's right. So -6, and is it going to be a less than or equal to or a less than? Less than, because it's an open circle there. Does that make sense? And then what's going to be my biggest y value?
6.
This point right here, which is what?
6 or less than or equal to?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So my y value is 6. Does that make sense? And less than or equal to or less than? Less than or equal to. Because there's a point there. It's not open. Yeah. So someone in the last class asking about this one said, why don't we look at this point instead of this one for the lowest? Can someone answer that? It's not, yeah, this point right here would be actually lower than this point right here. So we want to go to the lowest one. Does that make sense?
What if there wasn't a point on that spike? Would it be?
If there, say that again.
If there wasn't a point, like on
here?
On the top. Wait, when does there have to be?
When do you use interval?
We use it actually a lot. You use it, you're really going to use it like in pre-calculus and calculus a lot if you go on to the higher levels.
I figured out.
I don't even know whether to use it.
So just look at the directions. Yeah. So we need to put this in interval notation too. Go ahead and do interval notation for this problem here. So you do interval notation for that. For number 5.
Did you have a little question?
Oh, yeah.
Can we do both?
Why'd you add it on both?
Has to be smallest and it's easy to do because it's so different.
Oh, that's done. No, because it's an open circle. Oh. Just learning it.
Okay, so this is inequality. And this is interval. So why did I put a parentheses on the -6? Open circle. We don't include that -6. So that's why we put a parentheses there. Does that make sense? I know this is the first time you've seen it. We didn't talk about this on Friday. Okay, so now on the last one, what's my low value?
Negative infinity.
It's gonna be. Let me finish this one. So what's my lowest value on this? Negative infinity down here, which is the arrow going down. So that's a negative infinity. And I know that's weird. That's hard to think about. So less than y. And then what's my high point? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is there another point higher than that? 6, 7. So this point here would be my high point. Less than 7 or less than or equal to?
I thought it was like
Less than or equal to 7. Okay, what would that be in interval notation?
Parentheses, negative infinity, and then 7 with the bracket.
So parentheses on the negative infinity. Negative infinity is not a number. Never gets to negative infinity. It's just
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Oh, I didn't know that was
yeah. So this is yep. You have to look at both of them. So once again, there's more than one point here, so we have to go to the highest one, which would be this here. Does that make sense? No, you're not the only one, so I'm glad that you brought that up.